I walked into Christmas dinner invisible until I revealed the $150,000 key that changed everything. They never saw me coming. Hey there. Thanks for stopping by today. How are you feeling right now? Before we dive in, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced a situation like the one in today's story? Today, we're going to explore the journey of someone who's been overlooked, underestimated, and had to fight to claim their worth. If you've ever felt invisible or doubted, this one might really hit home. Stick around till the end to see how they turned everything around. And hey, if you enjoy the story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so I can keep bringing you more stories like this. Thanks a lot for being here.
I still remember that cold feeling, like a shadow that followed me through the halls of our house, never quite letting me step into the light. Growing up Ellis wasn't easy. I was Morgan Ellis, the quiet daughter who faded into the wallpaper while everyone's eyes sparkled for Ethan, the golden boy, the perfect son, the one who deserved all the praise, attention, and love. It's strange, isn't it? How your own family, the people who are supposed to be your safe haven, can make you feel like a stranger in your own home. My parents, Michael and Carol, never said it outright. But the message was always clear. Ethan was the future, the pride. I was the afterthought, the mistake, the girl who was just there. I'd spend hours sitting alone in my room, listening to the faint sounds of laughter and voices drifting from the living room where the family gathered. I wasn't invited to those moments, not really. Birthdays, holidays, even simple dinners felt like performances I wasn't cast in. My birthday was always a painful reminder. Ethan's parties were extravagant. Guests, decorations, gifts. Mine? Usually a cake with one candle and a few awkward smiles. One year, I got a sweater from a thrift store. It still smelled like someone else's memories. And Christmas? It was even worse. Under the glittering tree, Ethan's presents were stacked high, wrapped in shiny paper and tied with perfect bows. Mine were sparse, forgotten, or left to be opened last with barely a glance. I remember watching my parents fuss over Ethan, telling stories of his accomplishments, how proud they were. Meanwhile, I was invisible, like a ghost in my own family. But the worst was the silence. The silence that said I didn't matter. The silence louder than any argument. I didn't cry much back then. I swallowed the hurt. I learned to disappear. Sometimes. I wonder if they even realized how much damage silence can do. There were moments when I tried to reach out, asking for help, for guidance, for a little bit of attention. But my struggles were met with impatience or dismissal. "Why can't you be more like Ethan?" was the refrain I heard too often. It's amazing how a simple question can shape your entire sense of self-worth. By the time I was 13, I was desperate enough to ask for help from outside the house. I saw Dr. Patel, a childhood psychologist. She told my parents Morgan's pain isn't from isolation. It's from being ignored. My mother scoffed. We love both our kids equally. But that was a lie I had known too well. I learned early that love in my family was conditional and divided. One ordinary Thursday after school, I saw it, a flyer taped crookedly on the bulletin board. Intro to Computer Science Club, Room 204, Thursdays after school. It wasn't much, just a faded sheet of paper. But it called to me like nothing else ever had. The first day I walked into room 204, I felt something shift. The hum of computers, the click of keyboards, and the quiet concentration of students creating something out of thin air. It was magical. Mr. Bennett, our computer science teacher, was passionate in a way that made you believe anything was possible. He pulled me aside one day and said, "Morgan, you have a gift. Don't let anyone shrink you." I clung to those words. In that club, I found a family that wasn't bound by blood. We rebuilt old, broken computers, scavenged junkyard parts to make them work again. We argued over the best programming languages and stayed late, debugging each other's code. For the first time, I felt seen not for how invisible I was, but for what I could create. But at home, the cold continued. My parents didn't understand my obsession with computers. Why waste time on screens when you could be helping with chores or getting a real job? My mother would say. Ethan would snicker behind my back. She's just the basement coder, probably talking to herself. I knew they didn't believe in me, but the more they doubted, the harder I pushed. I started staying after school every Thursday without fail. I learned Python, Java, C++. I built my first simple game on a borrowed laptop. I spent nights poring over code, writing lines that made sense, unlike the chaos at home. Scholarships became my lifeline. I applied to every computer science program I could find, hoping to escape the small town that saw me as a mistake. College acceptance letters arrived, one after another. And then, the big one, a full ride to a university in New York City. But telling my family? Never. I packed quietly, left a note, and took the first bus to my new life. New York City hit me like a tidal wave, overwhelming, unforgiving, yet filled with boundless opportunity. The city never really sleeps, and if you weren't moving forward every single day, you risked being swallowed whole by the noise and pace. My first apartment was a cramped dorm room with peeling paint and a tiny window that barely let in the light. I shared a communal bathroom with dozens of strangers, and the thin walls echoed every whisper and footstep. Those first few weeks were brutal. I worked part-time at a local cafe, serving espresso to strangers who didn't know my name, while juggling an impossible load of classes. Nights blurred into dawn as I pored over textbooks, debugging lines of code, and drafting algorithms. I often found myself gazing out the window, watching yellow cabs streak past neon signs, wondering if I'd made the right choice. There were moments when exhaustion brought tears, silent, private moments where I felt utterly alone. But each setback steeled my resolve. The memory of my old house in Seattle, the cold glances from my mother, Ethan's sneering laughter, these ghosts fueled my fire. My mentor, Mr. Bennett, was a lifeline. Though miles away, he provided guidance through emails and video calls, encouraging me to push through obstacles and believe in my potential. His words, "Morgan, your mind is a weapon wielded," echoed in my head during the toughest times. College wasn't just school. It was survival and transformation. I immersed myself in projects, learned multiple programming languages, and worked on developing cybersecurity frameworks. My capstone project, an advanced intrusion detection system, was selected to represent the university at a national tech symposium. When I walked across that stage at graduation, diploma in hand, I wasn't just celebrating an academic achievement. I was claiming my victory over years of neglect and doubt. Soon after, a leading cybersecurity firm offered me a position as a junior systems architect. It wasn't just a job, it was my entry into a world where my skills commanded respect and my ideas mattered. Years flew by in a blur of long hours and challenging projects. I led teams building digital fortresses to protect financial institutions from cyber threats. My work directly impacted millions of users' safety and trust. For years later, I had saved enough to buy my dream brownstone condo in Fort Greene. The exposed brick walls, the sleek modern kitchen, the quiet tree-lined streets, it was everything I'd imagined and more. That home was my sanctuary, a physical reminder of how far I'd come. Friends like Avery and Caleb weren't just support systems. They were family. At my housewarming, we gathered on floor cushions, shared cheap wine, and laughed like no one was watching. I felt for the first time that I truly belonged somewhere. Then came the call that shattered my carefully crafted bubble. Grace, my cousin and only family connection, reached out hesitantly. "Mom and Dad want you to come home for Christmas," she said softly. "They want to make things right." My heart sank. 7 years of silence between us. 7 years of distance, both physical and emotional. And now, after all this time, they wanted me back? I spent the next few days wrestling with myself. Was this an olive branch or a trap? Could I walk back into the house that once made me feel invisible and still keep my dignity? The morning I packed, I chose my clothes carefully, nothing flashy, but sharp. Thoughtful gifts wrapped in simple paper sat in my suitcase. I was going home, but not the same girl who had left. Pulling up to the old neighborhood, the sight of our dilapidated house hit me harder than I expected. Faded paint peeling from the siding, overgrown shrubs swallowing the porch, and the flickering porch light that barely kept the darkness at bay. The house looked like it was gasping for life, much like the family within. Stepping inside felt surreal. The living room was crowded, voices quieting as heads turned in unison. I could feel the undercurrent of whispered judgments, the palpable tension like a thick fog. "She's actually here," someone muttered. "Wearing what?" "Sweatpants," another voice sneered. I glanced down. Not sweatpants, tailored black slacks, and a minimalist designer coat. A quiet statement that said I was no longer invisible. Ethan emerged from the kitchen, hand in hand with Rachel, his wife, glowing with the news of their upcoming child. Everyone clapped and laughed, but their amusement felt like daggers aimed at me. Dinner was a parade of snide remarks and disguised insults. Uncle Mike, ever the clown, threw out, "The dishwasher job at my diner is still open." "Morgan, you interested?" I smiled politely and declined, knowing full well that their jokes masked years of resentment and condescension. My assigned seat was on the worn-out couch. The old bedroom I once called mine now repurposed as Ethan's office. Throughout the meal, I kept my composure, but inside, I wrestled with a familiar storm, a mix of anger, sadness, and determination. Grace, sensing my turmoil, squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of solidarity. The tension in the room was palpable, simmering just beneath the surface, like a volcano ready to erupt. Everyone had their eyes on me, waiting, expecting something, anything, to give them a reason to dismiss me once again. But this time, I wasn't going to let the silence or the sneers define me. When it came time for the gift exchange, I watched as Ethan and Rachel tore into their presents with enthusiasm: luxury watches, designer scarves, the kind of gifts that said, "We belong here." My parents beamed with pride at every unwrap. And then it was my turn. The room grew quiet. My mother gave a sharp inhale, as if she suddenly remembered something important. "Morgan, we completely forgot," she gasped, voice dripping with feigned surprise. Ethan snorted, "Just like when we were kids. Don't cry now, okay? You're an adult." I held their gazes evenly, refusing to let the bitterness seep in. Slowly, I reached into my purse and pulled out a sleek, brushed steel keychain. The small piece of metal caught the light and reflected it back like a beacon. "This," I said, holding it up, "is the key to my new apartment." A hush fell over the room. Mom's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. What do you mean?" I could see Dad leaning in, eyes narrowing. "How much did you pay for that place?" I smiled, a calm smile that hid years of pain and triumph. "I bought it with bonuses from my job. My company licensed a cybersecurity framework I developed to a major international bank. After taxes, I cleared about $150,000. The sound of a dropped fork echoed somewhere in the back. Ethan's mouth hung open. Rachel's eyes grew wide. "I'm a software developer," I continued, voice steady. "I design enterprise security systems for Fortune 500 clients." The stunned silence was a sharp contrast to the laughter and jeers from just moments ago. Then Ethan shifted, recovering his arrogance. "That's cute, but I've got a startup. We're about to disrupt the market. I just need seed money, $200,000. You in?" I looked at each of them, the family who had once laughed at me, who had left me to figure things out alone, who had made me feel less than. "No," I said firmly. I'm not giving you a single cent." Their smiles vanished like fog under the morning sun. Dad's voice cracked. "We're family, Morgan. We help each other." I folded my arms, a slow fire igniting in my chest. "Where was family?" I asked, "when I graduated and you told me to find my own place? When you paid for Ethan's college but left me to fend for myself? That was different, right?" Mom barked back. "We didn't have the money then." "Sure you did," I shot back. "You had it for Ethan. Not for me." The room erupted in heated words, accusations, justifications, and anger. I stood, ready to leave the house I no longer recognized as home. "You'll regret this," Mom shouted after me. I looked over my shoulder, voice calm but resolute. "I won't." Walking away wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Back in my apartment, the city lights of Brooklyn stretched before me, vibrant, alive, and welcoming. My phone buzzed relentlessly with calls and texts from family, guilt trips disguised as apologies, and thinly veiled threats. I blocked them all. But my real family was waiting for me in the quiet warmth of my chosen circle. Avery, Caleb, Grace, they were the ones who had cheered me on through sleepless nights, who celebrated my wins as if they were their own. We met at our favorite wine bar, a cozy place with worn leather chairs and twinkling fairy lights overhead. I told them everything: the betrayal, the resilience, the ultimate victory. "Good riddance," Avery said with a smirk. "Sounds like they were toxic as hell." "Do you think you'll miss them?" someone asked. I thought about the years of mourning the family I never had. "No," I said. "This is the closure I needed." Our glasses clinked to family by choice, not blood. Life moved forward. Caleb and I planned trips to Japan, learning the language, bookmarking temples and noodle shops. Grace called every week with updates on those still back in Seattle, tales of Ethan and Rachel still living off my parents, their startup still just talk. The stories my parents spun painted me as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned them despite all they sacrificed. But I knew the truth. I built a life on my own terms. Months later, Ethan found a new number and called. His voice was strained, pleading to catch up, to introduce me to Madison, his daughter. I listened briefly, then ended the call. I felt nothing but peace sitting on my balcony, sipping coffee beside Caleb. My old bedroom was being converted into a nursery. It didn't sting anymore. That room never truly belonged to me. The distant relatives kept reaching out, sending voicemails, texts, and even invitations. Aunt Nora left a message: "Family is forever, Morgan." But I was done. I was free. My career soared. I was promoted to head of engineering, in the top 1% salary bracket. At a celebration with friends, Caleb brought champagne. "Let's buy a house," I said, dreaming aloud. "With a yard. Maybe a dog." Messages popped up. Mom said she must be a drug dealer. I laughed. Let them say what they want. I am living my story. And if you've ever felt invisible, silenced, or unvalued in your own family, know this: you have the power to rewrite your narrative. Don't wait for permission. Build your life reflecting your worth, not their expectations.
What did you think about Morgan's journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts, feelings, or reflections. Drop a comment below and share your perspective. If this story resonated with you or inspired you in any way, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to join me for the next chapter of stories that celebrate strength, resilience, and the power to choose your own path. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. Your support means the world.